Hi everyone, these are my smartphone awards of 2021. Now you might be surprised that there are some different selections than some bigger YouTubers you have seen. Now is this down to me not having the same amount of devices and tested the same? Maybe? Nah, probably not, But to start this smartphone award, gotta do something to make it look more visual. So, alright, that should be better. So, these are my smartphone awards of 2021. Now, as stated, I haven't used as many devices as some bigger channels out there, but I still feel like I have some position where I can give my indication on which one I find the best. So, there are some different categories. Of course, we have our normal high-end, we have our mid-range, and then we have our entry to mid-range. Now, why do I say entry to mid-range? Basically because of the Poco F3. That's the reason why. Anyway, the entry to mid-range kind of segment is 0 to 400. So basically, any phone that costs up to 400, $399.99 is basically in that category. Then we have 400 to 700 for the mid to high end, because there are some phones that are basically a high end but are a bit cheaper. And then of course we have 700 to, well, infinity. So phones like 2500 will be there as well. I haven't tested any phones for that price, but that's not the point. So let's begin this with, of course, the high-end segment. Now I'm gonna cheat a little bit in this one, because the winner overall for this category, for me, is the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II. I know, this phone technically comes from 2020, but I've bought it in 2021, so it still counts, right? Yeah, that's how I'm gonna justify it. Anyway, the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II for me is definitely the winner in this category. It does really well. It gives you the basics as well. You get a headphone jack, you get the micro SD, you get a charger inside of the box, which is just crazy that you need to buy one separately for a lot of phones now. You know why it is. They just want you to buy more stuff from them, not the environment. If you believe that, I'm sorry, but it just isn't the case. They don't care. Either way, the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II wins clearly because of that, and not to mention that in terms of camera, it's one of my favorites for daytime stills. It really has a lot of character to the shots themselves. It's not the most realistic when it comes to just color representation of the shots themselves, and computational photography just isn't that much of a thing in the Sonys, but it really isn't aimed for that, so I really appreciate that. But with that being said, like stated, the camera isn't the most natural by any means, but what it allows for having a little bit more saturation, just a touch, and a little bit more contrast to create some depth in the shot itself, and therefore it just creates shots that have a lot of feeling to them, a lot of soul. It captures what you are looking at quite well. Now the winner for the camera section, however, it's really close. The Xiaomi and of course the Sony basically score the same here in terms of points, but the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra has that slight edge up when it comes to the camera because of video recording. Video recording is just better on the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra. And overall, the character for the shots themselves is really good again. It goes for a very natural looking color, and it goes for, well, what I'm looking at. And I appreciate that when it comes to a phone. If I do want to edit it afterwards, I simply can. Don't really do so, but if I would want to, I could. The Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra is a really solid competitor when it comes to the camera, and overall it scores really close to what the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II actually got. The Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra is of course third. I haven't tested many high-end phones, and I'm pretty sure if I tested more of those, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra will come lower. While I do appreciate some things when it comes to Samsung, like software experience being one of the best on Android, if not the best, and like the fingerprint scanner, which is without a doubt miles ahead of the camera fingerprint scanner that you get with all the other competitors, I don't find that, for instance, the camera is good. You don't get a charger inside, you don't get a micro SD, you don't get a headphone jack. And especially from a company that made fun of a different company for saying, ha, we have those. We care about the consumers. And then removing all of that after making fun of it, for me, that doesn't float well. And therefore, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra is third in this one. Then, of course, we have the most competitive section. This is actually really, really competitive. The 400 to 700. So the mid-range to the almost high-end phone kind of category. The winner here for me is the OnePlus 9. Now I haven't tested the OnePlus 9 Pro, but the OnePlus 9 again is a really solid package. Especially if you don't care for the micro SD and of course the headphone jack, it is really a solid package. The build is pretty good. The design is, it depends on the person as well, but also depends on the color. But the design itself kind of stands out and it looks decent. Of course, you still have the island in itself, but overall, the OnePlus 9 is a solid phone. I don't really have much to complain about. And in terms of camera, again, it goes for more that natural look that I prefer. I know a lot of people didn't like that kind of look when it comes to the camera. And I know a lot of reviews talk bad about the camera. But for myself, when it comes to daytime shots, I think OnePlus does a good job. So, who is second? This one is really close. So I have a preference score. And with the preference score, I basically rate the phone and see how it ends up. The Xiaomi 11T Pro has, in my preference score, 403 points out of 550. The Motorola G100 has 402 out of my preference score. It's really, really close. But with that being said, the Xiaomi 11T Pro did get that higher score. For instance, it has 120 watt charging. 120 watt. That means that your phone goes from 0 to 100 in 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Take a shower, watch an anime episode or something like that, and the battery is full. It's really fast, and well, you cannot look past that. Overall though, we don't know what it does to the battery life and the longevity of it, but honestly, the phone itself is pretty solid. I still find it a bit boring, as I stated in my review, but overall it does really well. Camera performance is pretty good. It's not the best out there, but it's pretty good. And overall, just the phone itself works well. The third place, as stated, goes to the Motorola G100. The Motorola G100 is a solid and compelling package. Especially what I like is, for instance, you have the macro camera. And macro photography is... It's not the easiest because you need proper light. And this is what Motorola has done really well. They actually have a ring around that camera that focuses on the macro. And then you actually have enough lighting for it to look proper. Light with macro photography is really important. So having that flash around the camera itself is genius. And macro shots look really, really good on the Motorola G100. And overall camera again goes for the more natural look when it comes to just the overall picture itself. And again, I appreciate that. I like that better than something that goes with oversaturation, too much computational photography where the shot just doesn't look right and soulless. The Motorola G100 also wins something else in this category, and that's the best value. It has the headphone jack, you do get the charger inside, you actually get an extra cable inside as well, where it's HDMI to USB-C, so you can connect it to your television or your monitor or something that you prefer like that. But it's simply a good value for the package that you are getting. And again, honestly, overall, it's a really solid device with great battery life as well. So the Motorola G100, for me in this category, from phones that I have tested, is definitely the best value. And then we go to the last one. This is from 0 to 400. This is a difficult one because the Poco F3, when it comes to overall the phone itself, does better in a lot of things than, for instance, the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Pro. With that being said, for the price that you are paying for the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Pro, and if you want to pay a little bit less, it's definitely the best value out of it all. It really is. And for that, because of that value itself, and because of what you are getting with the phone itself, I do give it, well, spot 1. It wins this category for me. It's a really solid phone for the price that you are paying. There are some things where I would like to see some improvements upon, and that's especially when it comes to video recording. Video recording just isn't as good. The Xiaomi 11 Lite, for instance, does that better. Well, the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite does that better. Video recording just isn't that great on, of course, the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Pro. And then, of course, the second prize goes to the Poco F3. The Poco F3 is a really solid phone. It comes with that same Snapdragon 870 inside that you will also find in the Motorola G100. And honestly, that CPU is my favorite CPU in an Android device. It's a really solid CPU to have in your phone. So here, again, great choice when it comes to the CPU and great overall device as well. And in terms of design, apart from in the black, where you just see all the smudges, You clean it up every single moment that you are trying to use it. It is really a solid design, and I prefer it over, well, the Inspired 11T Pro, because it definitely looks like that one. Well, the 11T Pro looks like the Poco F3, of course. Overall, the design looks really appealing as well, and I think they've done a good job here. Now, the third place is the Motorola G60s. Here again, it's a compelling package. It's nothing that shouts out loudly, "Ooh, I'm a great phone," or "Yes, this category is really good about it," for instance, camera, where it's just average. And overall, it's a decently average phone, but great value as well, and I love the texture back on the device as well. Again, overall, a really solid device, and it gets third place in this category. Now, I will list all the scores in a bit, where you can check them out yourself. So let's start with the high end, so you can see where I rate the phones in general. Of course, have our mid to high end. And then, of course, we have our low or entry to mid-range. So those are my scores. Let me explain a little bit about the preference score and how you can use it yourself. Preference score is basically, for myself, I find camera the most important. Therefore, it's on top, and it shouldn't count as much as, for instance, the fun factor on the phone. The fun factor, I find it important, but just clearly not as important as the camera. Like features, it's also important to me. For instance, having a 3.5mm headphone jack, having a micro SD, those things matter to me. Software updates, for instance, matters a little bit less to me. So therefore, it's a little bit lower. And it shouldn't count as the same amount for something that I care more about. So therefore, camera gets a 10 times multiplier, and it goes down to, of course, fun factor, which gets a 0 multiplier. It just gets the 1 to 10 number. Overall, this makes it easy for me to see where a phone lists for me in terms of my usage and in terms of my preference. But as stated, if you have your own preference, which is something that I cannot account for, you have to, of course, list that for yourself and just use my scores and see where it ends up for you. See where it does well for you. If you, for instance, care about the display and the software experience, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra will score a lot better than it does now on my list. Overall though, this is my preference score, and I hope it makes a little bit more sense when it comes to just the overall experience about a phone for me. Either way, I hope you enjoyed my smartphone awards of 2021, and yes, I know again, my list is a little bit different than some others out there, and I don't think much would have changed, especially when it comes to Sony. I just like their devices overall, and I like that you get a lot with the phone itself. Either way, let me know what you think about the smartphones that I've selected, and overall just about this video. And let me know which is your favorite device of 2021 that you actually have used. Don't take too much in account for reviews, because at the end, as stated, there's a preference to it, and therefore I feel like you should use that preference score yourself, and maybe by selection see which phone works best for you. Either way, hope you enjoyed, and if you did, that's great. And of course, it's close to 2022. That goes really fast. So hopefully 2022 will be a better year, because we need one. Either way, have a good one, and talk to you guys in the next.